Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Serian. I'm here to speak about the Armenian Genocide. The Armenian Genocide was a very well-planned, intentional, systematic form of a complete annihilation of an entire race of people. It started in terms of the planning and the organizing shortly after the young Turkish government came into power in 1908 and went right through to 1915. But it wasn't until 1915, April 24th, when the Turkish government actually started the execution phase of the Armenian Genocide. And the Armenian Genocide went from 1915 to 1923. The Armenian Genocide is a fact. It's not a historical debate, even though to this very day, Turkey denies the genocide even happened. The international community, however, has spoken loudly about this. US, Britain, and France each have missionary and diplomatic accounts of the Armenian Genocide that are all very well documented. The Armenian Genocide is also well corroborated amongst the academic, legal, and human rights communities around the world. And because Germany partnered with Turkey during World War I, Germany actually has a very well documented daily accounts of what happened during these 8 years with the Armenians. So the Armenian Genocide literally to the day lives in the archives of the German military vault. There are hundreds of books written about the Armenian Genocide, most of them by non-Armenians. The Shoah Foundation, founded by Steven Spielberg, has videotape of witnesses and survivors of the Armenian Genocide. There were nearly 200 articles just in the New York Times alone from 1915 to 1923, most of them front-page articles talking about the fate of the Christian Armenians in the Ottoman Empire. As a matter of fact, those articles are in this book, which I actually have right here. If you can get a sense for how thick this book is, this is just the New York Times. There are scores of first-hand survivor accounts, including my own grandmother, Anna Manoogian. She was the only female living survivor of her village of Galdi. Who pulled the strings to the Armenian Genocide? Who was in charge of the Armenian Genocide? Who orchestrated this? Who made this happen? His name is Talat Pasha. He's very commonly known as the Turkish Hitler. He was bent on the Armenian question, as he called it. And for him, that meant eliminating all Armenians, as well as the Pontic Greeks and the Assyrians. It wasn't just the Armenians. It was all the Christian communities in the Ottoman Empire. To do this, he manufactured lies to rally his troops and to rally the common Turkish citizen. The two lies that he manufactured, the first one was, well, the Armenians had to be killed because they were rebelling. In reality, the Christians, the Armenians, were very badly discriminated against in the Ottoman Empire. And they were asking and speaking out for political and economic reforms. There was no rebellion. So really, that's the first lie. The second is that the Armenians had to be killed because they were siding with our enemy, the Russians. Well, that can't be any further from the truth because, again, the Armenian Genocide was planned and orchestrated when Talat Pasha came into government, well before World War I even started. And the Armenian Genocide and the killing of the Christians happened in the interior parts of Turkey, hundreds and hundreds of miles away from any of the fighting that had anything to do with World War I. Simply put, Talat Pasha gave justification to a violent and brutal means to transform the Ottoman Empire into one nation, one people, one race, all Turkish. There were no room for Christian minorities. The start of the execution phase of the Armenian Genocide. 250 of the most prominent Armenian leaders were rounded up. We're talking about priests and scholars and teachers, artists. And the hope was, well, the Turks want to talk with us. We want to talk about political and economic reforms. But what happened when they arrived At this meeting, all 250 were put to death. This was the official start of the execution phase of the Armenian Genocide. That was April 24th, 1915. Shortly after that, the deportation marches started. Again, Talat Pasha was quick to say, we're relocating the Armenians to safety because they're in harm's way during World War I. The reality was, these were death marches. These Armenians, men, women, children, young, old, were hoarded out of their homes, lined up, and they were sent out to either be drowned in lakes or put out to the desert and killed. Along the way, they suffered all different types of mutilation, starvation, deprivation of food, water, shelter, and rape. There is, I guess, a bright spot, if you want to call it that, which is some of the Armenians actually made it through, and they survived the Armenian Genocide. There was many orphanages set up around the perimeter outside of the Ottoman Empire, and the international community knew what was going on, and they set up the orphanages to try to save as many people as they possibly could. My grandma, Anna Manoogian, was one of those people. Simply put, she went through hell, but she made it to the orphanage. And I have her full story that I share when we go to high schools and colleges throughout New Jersey as part of the Armenian Genocide Society. But today we have an excerpt for you that I'll share. These are direct words from Anna Manoogian. That's Anna on the left with my grandfather, Margos. 3 young children. The girl to the right is my mom, and you see Anna in later years to the right. So these are direct words from Anna. It's an excerpt of her story. At the age of 25, Anna decided to flee her home to avoid capture by the roaming Turks. She had just lost her husband, who was taken away and killed. One day, Anna's father, on his way home, was ambushed and stabbed several times by Turks. He made it home, but died several days later. As Anna fled, she turned back one last time and saw her entire village in flames, narrowly escaping, as she knew there would be no survivors. She left with her 1 infant and 3 small children, all less than 6 years in age. One by one, her children died, and she buried them in the sand using nothing but her own hands. With Anna's children now dead from starvation, she was now all alone and literally nude. Anna traveled by foot the best she could. The nights were cold, so one day she came across some bodies of women and children who were killed by the Turkish sword. She took the blood-stained clothing from a woman and covered herself. Anna continued to travel at night and reached villages to get help from anyone willing to help her. During this time, she witnessed many horrors, including Turkish soldiers cutting up the dead bodies to see if any Armenians had swallowed gold. She saw boys with their genitals cut off, mutilated bodies of girls and women's breasts cut off, stomachs ripped open, hands and feet cut off. At one point, Anna decided to end her lifeless body by flinging herself into a lake with the hope of drowning. There were hundreds of Armenian bodies in the lake as she attempted suicide. She simply had no will to live. By the grace of God, however, Anna made it through. Anna was the only living female survivor of her village of Galdi, located in historic Armenia. Just to go back, these are some of the pictures of the children who weren't as fortunate. They were being left in the street to die as soldiers walked past, or the children were being lined up and sold into slavery. Very heart-wrenching part of the Armenian Genocide in terms of what happened to the children. Okay, what was the result of the Armenian Genocide? Aside from the killing, the torture, and the rape, there were hundreds of schools, churches, and businesses that were ransacked and destroyed. What wasn't destroyed was turned into Turkish property. Robbery of all Armenians' own land and possessions had taken place. This was a home that the Armenians called their home for 3,000 years, stolen, now gone. To truly understand the scope of the Armenian genocide, one only needs to look at the historic Ottoman Empire map, which is on the top, and what is today a map you'd see hanging up in your home or in a social studies or history class of Turkey. You can see the dotted line. I did my best to line them up. The map on the top, all the colored areas show all different regions of what once was Armenia. Those were all different regions of Armenia, and today, as you can see, the Turks and the Kurds live there illegally, and it's called Turkey. Of course, I refer to it as historic Armenia. The names of the cities, towns, and villages have all been changed to Turkish names. If you go there today, you'll see absolutely no existence of Armenian culture or any of the signs or buildings, all destroyed or converted over. Hitler said right before invading Poland to rally his own generals, he said, and I quote him, "Who, after all, remembers the annihilation of the Armenians?" We do. 2015, April 24th, the 100th year anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. I took this picture, and I kind of regret I wasn't on a ladder to get up higher so you can see how long this crowd of people went. It went on for miles. Not just Armenians. Other Christians, other minorities that have suffered genocide, human rights activists, anyone with a conscience or anyone who understands morality, they came out and they joined to show their remembrance of the Armenian genocide. Same day, April 24th, 3,000 miles away in Los Angeles. Take a look at this picture. Just take a look at the sea of people. Again, not all Armenians. This is just New York and LA. This went on last year all over the United States and all around the globe. And it happens every year, April 24th. In closing, I'd like to say Turkey must come to terms and accept their historical past, as well as their current campaign of denial. They spend millions and millions and millions of dollars every year to cover up the Armenian genocide and to say that it never happened. This issue will never end until justice is paid for their crime of genocide. And in the words of my grandma, Anna Manoogian, you could never forget. Thank you very much.